Stanley farm ownership is from this point to this point right here. Now that Pam bought the farmhouse, which is here. So the original bound, which was all Stanley farm, was here. And before anybody started dividing anything up, it went from here all the way down to this iron pin at the end of the wall here. And then the sugar house is right about here, right on the edge of this line, not far from this pin, which we stood at right here. And then remember I said there was a pin off on the edge of the power line right away. That's right there. And that angles down on a line that actually comes out alongside what is now the Drury Vinton property all the way down to the lake. We own, the parcel comes along Newport Road down into the swamp area here, but if you look at that line continues across over to, originally continued across over to the lake over here, and we owned all that frontage along the lake all the way over that way. And then it comes back up here along this line to a big split rock with a huge 3-inch iron pipe in it right here, and then angles up to here to a drill hole in a wall, and it has what's called a witness near it, which is an iron pin that stands up so that you can find nowhere to look. And then it angles across here to a split rock, and down on the side of the split rock there's a half-inch iron rod that sticks out of it. It's actually like an upside down railroad spike. And then it comes up along that same line to a drill hole in a wall up here at the corner of Kentlands. The only problem is their tennis court sticks over the edge a little bit. But then down to here, which is an iron pipe in a wall, plain as day, can't miss it, angles across along Kentlands to an iron pipe here, and follows that wall all the way up to an iron pin in the ground with a plastic cap on it here. And then remember when we started, I pointed out the mark in the rock, the pin in the rock. That's right there on in the ledge at the edge, and then back down around the Hillis piece to an iron pin in the wall here. Now, obviously Pam's parcel is not part of that, so we actually have only this much frontage on Burpee Hill right here, and then up to the far wall up here, around this way, up this way, around Windmill, and then over here to the wall, and then all the way down. So that's pretty much the loop of what comprises the property. Cool. Every single bound can be found. The ones here are actually flush with the ground. This one is flush with the ground, so you can't see it readily unless you have some sort of metal detector. The old dump is right in this area right here. Right in there. That's where the old dump is. And then the sugar house is right about there. Right on the edge of that property line. I mean, you were 3 paces from the property boundary when you were standing at the lower edge of the sugar house. Right. And the old spring that feeds that fed the farmhouse is right there. And then the windmill is right there. And the cistern is right up here. And then water flowed by gravity from there down to the farmhouse here. So you had a piston pump actually in the windmill that was actuated by turning gear that pulled the rod up and pushed it down, pulled it up and pushed it down, because what's called a positive displacement pump, so it could suck the water all the way from out here up to there, as long as it's primed to begin with, and then force it from there up to the top of the hill. So, and that pump, it went to the scrapyard, but it was in the barn for a long, long time, but it was hopeless. There was nothing that could be done. The farm was a subsistence farm. I mean, basically, when they settled here, the purpose of the farm was to make enough, to produce enough food and timber and so forth to survive. And that was all they did it for. There was very little that was sold and that went away to market. They had excess cheese, sometimes pork, various and sundry other things that they would sell. But they'd have to get it to market via the railroads, and that wasn't until well into the 1800s before anybody could do that.
My mother remembers peddling butter up and down the hill for
absolutely.
17 cents a pound.
Because there weren't any supermarkets back then. Everybody had to make their own food, so they had cows, pigs, chickens. They had to raise feed for those. That's why they needed so much land. They had to cut the hay. Hay's still cut, but we don't use it ourselves. So all of that went to subsist. Basically, it was a subsistence farm. That's what they called it. And if they made a little extra, great. And then other people eventually started doing day labor work in various and sundry places. I remember there's a journal up in one of the rooms, or was upstairs, where our great-grandfather worked for about 10 cents a day, breaking roads in the winter. We'd shovel snow, basically, is what it amounted to, all winter long. And that was where they'd get cash that they could then use to trade for things like clothing, cloth, and various and sundry other things. Because a lot of that they didn't make themselves. Yeah.
What decades are we talking about?
We're talking about late 1800s, mid to late 1800s. 1863 is when they moved here. So during that period, there were no paved roads, no automobiles. Everything was horse-drawn, sleigh-drawn, and so forth. So it was a different world. But they depended on the farm. Right behind you, when we were here, first they started with wells, but right in that clump of birch trees there's an old foundation. And when I was a little boy, there was a building over it, and that's called the cistern. And that was where the water from the windmill was pumped from a spring way down. Oh, see where the tall pine tree is there? Well, where the tallest trees are in the back, there's a spring down there, and it pumped the water from the spring up to this cistern, and then it flowed by gravity down to the farmhouse. And that was the source of water until the 1930s, when they put town water in. Because as you can see, it's hard to find water when you've got mostly rock. And we're standing on a gigantic rock. Well, the Burpee Hill is one gigantic piece of granite. So some places there's some soil and some holes, and we get a little water that way. So basically, that's the farm. And what we're doing now, so that all of you can have it forevermore, is we have set up a kind of a forest management plan so that we can produce a little bit of income from the property for almost forevermore, periodically, to be able to pay the taxes on the land, which are relatively low. The biggest tax we pay is on the beach. The beach right now isn't part of this, but it someday maybe will be. So what I thought we'd do is walk down through here, and I'll just talk a little bit about the timber management and why we're doing what we're doing and so forth. The views, the walls being cleaned up, this is purely aesthetic. It's neat to be able to see.
Gorgeous.
And look at everything. And Christmas trees will be done in about 4 years. We'll harvest those out. Then this will go back to being a hayfield. The bottom part of it, I may turn into another gigantic blueberry patch, but one that can be mowed from the seat of a tractor. But that's hopefully...
that's no fun.
Says you. The area that you see that's relatively low cut down there, that's what we've established for wildlife habitat primarily. What animals need is early successional forest. When you get to a big, beautiful forest that you like, that looks like a park, nothing can live there because there's no food. So what the animals depend on is things that are growing in. And so what we do is periodically we will whack that area that you see right there now in order to regenerate, so that we've got stuff growing up through this height that then is eaten by deer and used by songbirds, and it produces berries and various and sundry things for animals to survive. So that's why that piece is like that. The rest of it is just about all forest land. So let's head. When we were kids, there were still barbed wire fences all along these walls.
Yep.
And they would open and close gates to let cattle get into different pastures.
Right.
Now the spring that fed the farm is down through there, back of that field. It actually needs a new cover built for it. Huh?
This used to always be wet.
Yeah, well, it is a lot of the time. It is still. In the spring, this is just sheet flow of water down through. This wall is the easterlymost boundary of the property. Remember I told you that it starts all the way up there at the road, comes down by the Todds and the Hugheses and so forth, and this is that same boundary. this continues on down. There's a gap in the wall, and then the wall starts up again, and at the end of that second bit of wall is an iron pipe that you can't miss that sticks up, and that's the corner. It then turns and heads over that way. And we'll see the other end of that when we go to look for the sugar house.
All right, come on, let's go.
Does anyone know that bird that's singing up here?
Warbler.
You were just hearing a wood thrush.
Yeah.
It's a wood thrush.
That one?
Well,
Eventually they will.
Wood thrush, right? Isn't that what you said?
Yes.
Yeah. That's one of the sounds that I think.
Right.
this is a longer cut than the other one. I bet the excavator had a long way.
Yeah, you did.
And you better be careful, Steve.
Yeah.
Like, be careful.
We're going to take a little sidetrack here and go over and find the sugar house.
Yay! And what's
Okay.
the little lean-to? Who built that?
What?
What's the little lean-to?
I have no idea.
I think it's a tree.
I think that just fell that way.
Wow.
Peter, what's the green ribbon around that tree back there?
Just to mark the trail. That was the initial marking of the trail.
So this must be the road.
Yeah, coming right back. Won't be long.
Isn't it a great sound, Oliver, what it would make when you walk?
Yeah.
Squish, squish.
Oh, it's just one tree. From a distance, the car looked
Yeah,
like a lean-to. Now this is yellow, the other one is green.
Right over there, there's a little pipe sticking out of the ground, and our property boundary runs about like this. We own up that way, but not down here. Property boundary runs over this way.
It's just a long track.
Yeah, it is.
So, Peter, are you saying that the yellow things are our boundary markers or tree
Pretty
markers?
close, yeah.
Close.
But they're marking.
They're not precise, it's just as a guide for the surveyor.
It's telling you which way the sugar house is.
Yeah, sugar house is right up here. Yep, right in front of it.
You can't see it.
It's all falling down. Right here.
These little ones.
Peter, wasn't there a sugar house on Old Route 11 too?
Huh?
Wasn't there a sugar house on Old Route 11?
This is the sugar house right here.
And can we go see it?
Was there another one on the way down to the beach?
No. No, this is it. There was another one that was not standing when I was a child out over this way on the Charlie Gay's property. There's old metal in there, so be careful hiking around.
Right next to the road.
Now, when I was a little boy,
That's it.
about 7 years old, I hiked down here and found this, and the building was actually still standing and still had a roof on it. So that was 60, just under 60 years ago. This still had one quarter set here and over there, and it went over this. The brick structure is the arch, which is where you build the fire. The pans that they boil the sap in are over there. Most of the buckets are gone. It was primarily wooden buckets. And I think there's some telltale around here of, here. These are hoops that were around that formed the wooden buckets. Okay, and the larger hoops you see here, Pam isn't with us. Gathering tanks. That was for, those hoops held the gathering tanks together. And then these pans were what they boiled the sap in. They'd boil, and they'd have one boiling pan, and the second one was a finishing pan.
So this
So
was
you-
all through the 1800s?
Yes, up till the 38 hurricane.
Ah.
There's nothing left now of the original stand of trees that they used. They all got knocked down in the 38 hurricane. And as you can see, we're growing some lovely pine up and back here. And on the forest management plan, it'll refer to a 4.8 acre area of pine. And that's it, just above us, from here up to the woods road.
And Pete, was this a very safe house a long
Long time ago it was, yeah.
and there wasn't any of this
The
stuff?
bricks were here. This was all actually all stood together, but moisture has gotten into it, and then it's frozen, gone through freeze thaw cycles after cycle, and it busted it apart.
Because Pete, it got so old that it just fell apart.
That's right.
Boy, I wish I knew what their thinking was to not build it up again.
Because there's no sugar maples.
Oh, they did, yeah.
They all got knocked down
They
in
all
38
got
hurricane.
knocked down. That's,
So there was no sugaring to do.
yeah.
No,
Amazing.
it was pointless to have the facilities. Plus, I'm sure that as times changed, priorities changed. By the time they had supermarkets, you know, Aunt Jemima's was probably good enough, although it isn't for me. Anyway,
I tried getting my children to think syrup
Now,
once they knew it.
if you can, as you can see, the sugar house is actually the yellow ribbons there on pieces of wire in those trees, barbed wire, and that marks the edge of the boundary and angles up like this and ends up at the end of that wall that I was telling you about where that pipe was. So
Who ran the sugar house now?
I'm assuming that it was built of sawn timber. So my guess is that we built it since we owned it, and so it would have started with great-grandfather. You wait a sec. Started with great-grandfather, and then Bompa probably when he was a kid, but as an adult, I bet he never dealt with this at all.
We had so much to do with
There was, yeah, I mean, he was contracting then, so it was, you know, there isn't time. I mean, I can tell you, I did it on a small scale with just the trees on the farm, as did my father, and it takes time and energy, and I finally threw in the towel because it just, for what you got out of it, you had to either love doing it or there was no reason to do it because there was no economy in it.
just stoking the fire, because we've done it, Kath and I, in
Yeah.
upstate New York,
Yeah.
and it's
Well, it takes, if you have really good sap, 25 to 30 gallons of sap to a gallon of syrup. Average quality sap, 40 gallons to a gallon of syrup. Now the trees up on Stanley Farm had a 4.5% sugar content, which is unbelievably high, which is one of the reasons I enjoyed doing it. And so we got a ton of syrup out of it. Whoops, Jesus, find me anywhere.
you're not fire chief anymore.
Thank you, Peter, for giving it to us at family meeting for so many years.
Nope, that's a property boundary. That means it marks where we own the property on one side and somebody else on the other.
Oh, so you owned it on this side?
We own on this side and on this side.
Property boundaries.
That side is owned by a relative.
Lines. This one is the property line. That's why property lines are dashed lines.
I wish we had more little kids
No
here.
graph or inequality with the dashed line.
Just for the edification of younger people, whenever you come across, and older people, it's actually more often than not older people that pull them out. Whenever you come across a marker like this anywhere, do not touch it. There's maybe a temptation to pull it out and toss it, but it can cost thousands of dollars to put it back. So, because it has to be in a precise location. So there's one here, and there's another one right down there that marks. See, there's some pink ribbons on the tree limb over there, just out by the edge of the power line. That marks another bound, and then it turns again and heads back that way, and ends up lining up with what's now Drury Vinton's easterly boundary. Used to be our easterly boundary. Okay.
That's part of the deal.
Yes, and since I was a little boy, this same pipe has been here. So the one out there we couldn't find, but it was there. It's just been run over by a piece of machinery clear on the power line.
Water.
No, that, just so everybody knows,
The old pen.
everybody in the old days had a dump somewhere. And when they were small-scale consumers, the dump was usually along the walls, various and sundry places.
Oh wow, we've got a nice dump at the corner of Wee House.
Yep.
There. Oh
Yep.
man, have we found
but when
garbage
the
there.
scale of
Lots-
dumping got
lots and
larger,
lots.
they usually picked a spot on their property to have a dump where they would throw stuff. And since Bampa was my grandfather was a contractor, he needed a big place for stuff. And it was right down through there in the woods. Right down there, there's a dump. But there's nothing discernible left. When I was his age, there was a whole car down there. And the car is gone. There's not a trace of the car. So leaf litter, rust, various and sundry things just kind of packed it down. Huh?
I bet somebody took it away.
If you went and dug, you'd probably find something. But basically all the telltale remnants of what went on down there are pretty much gone. Nature's taking it back. So
Down by.
When are we going to reach the
But Molly and Sally.
this is the new road that was cut last summer.
Corner of the badminton lot. And you may
Right up in there, there's a spring where the water bubbles out of the ground. Not very far, only about 50 feet up in the woods up there, just opposite this big rock, and where the water is on the ground, so you can see. But it runs all year long, so this stays moist all year, but it's all rocks underneath, so it's pretty well drained, so you can drive through it. What this path does for us is it provides lateral access to all the timber that's up in there, so we can make forays up in to cut whatever needs to be cut, bring it out to here, and then down to the landing down below.
Isn't there another spring down here by the close to the road?
This comes
Yes,
out.
that's
Yeah,
that's
we
the
found
original
that
spring,
one,
but it's a little further on.
Got it.
Yeah.
Does the spring, Pete, up here have a pipe
No.
coming out of it? No.
Nope.
So you just gotta scoop it up.
That's right.
Lap it up.
I have a hose too.
Path. This is the footpath to the beach.
Ah, yes.
Now, for
Now we're in
the
front
faint of heart who don't want to walk up a really steep hill and would like to kind of cut crossways, this is where the original path to the beach comes out right here.
Right.
Okay. Well, we're going to pitch down over and go to the landing so everybody gets to see that.
Okay.
Or what's going to be. Yep. Yep, we'll go down. This is the other, if you took a left at the top of the hill, this is where you'd come out.
Pete, look, Jack.
Ah, you see what's down there? Down here, where the power line crosses the road, there's a gap, and it's swampy. Now, we're not going down there because it's right in the middle of the swamp. That's the end of the bound, and it angles down. You'll see where it turns from. Yep. Part of the farm, and when you go down to Little Sunapee, where you see first see the lake from the highway, we own from there all the way down about almost 3/4 of a mile. So all those places, Kentlands, various and sundry parcels along there, we owned all of that, all the way along. But it got sold out here and there to make money during the Depression, mostly. The property for Kentlands was sold out in 1908, also to make money. It was my grandfather's first big contracting job. And he sold the land for that purpose in order to be able to get the job to build the house. And that was his first big job.
Was that bribery?
Yeah, I think so.
Maybe get a new one.
Harry
And then
Snow's method.
the farm is, I'm not going to bother taking the plan out, but it's kind of an odd-shaped piece that runs down over the hill like this and then angles, and we've got almost a half a mile along Newport Road. The wall over by the Todds that runs by the shop and along down by Windmill and so forth, that wall is the boundary on that side, and it's about 2,000 feet. It goes from a red pipe out on the street all the way down to an iron pipe at the end of a wall way down in the woods, and we'll get very close to it, but I don't think there's any need to actually see it. This piece comes out, there's a bound right here. That nail in the rock right there is the bound of the corner of Hillis, and a little bit in the middle of the gap over there, right flush with the ground, there's an iron rod with a red plastic cap on it. That's the other bound. Follows that wall down, turns, comes over to a pipe, turns, comes over to a corner of a wall just where the tall trees are right over there.
Yeah?
All right, and then goes up along Kentlands, turns around Kentlands, meanders away back and forth down to about where the power line crosses the highway down on that side. Then we run down along the highway to a point where it starts to angle back up and meet the end of this wall. And that's the current. Those are the current bounds. We found every single bound. Everything is there. We have a couple of old encroachments, but you know we're working on that.